Hello, and welcome back to Guided Souls. I'm your host, Katie, and I'm excited to be back here for another week with you guys. This week, we are talking about discovering your own magic, following your own genius, and having the courage to walk away from anything that is not fully aligned with your soul at this time. And the reason that this topic is coming up right now is a little bit sad. But this eclipse season, which I believe started on the full moon on the 17th of September and ends on the day that this comes out, which is October 2nd. There's a lunar eclipse on October 2nd. This eclipse season has been wild for me in terms of just being incredibly ruthless with what I need to leave behind that is not serving me right now. And I'm really grateful that the universe is trusting me to reveal all this information to me right now, even though it's not necessarily the information that I wanted to hear. It's the information that I needed to hear. And it makes me think of that Rolling Stones song, I believe. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you get what you need. It's like the path that the universe has for us is not typically packaged in the way that our human egoic brain would like it to be. We have a vision of what our perfect life looks like and all of the different parts of it and what that entails. But the universe knows more than we do about what we need, not what we want. And so the universe is actually able to deliver us the most beautiful path for our unique soul, our unique journey. But in order to get there, we have to be able to let go of the things that we may want on the surface, but we know deep in our soul are not aligned for us, at least at this time. So sadly, that is what has come to light for me about this podcast. I have had such a wonderful time creating this podcast, and it's been so healing for me to be able to process so many things as I've been recording it and learning about myself along the way. And I'm so grateful for everyone who has tuned in along the way. But it's just getting to a point where it's no longer filling me up. And it's actually, I've noticed that it kind of becomes more of something that drains me, that I don't really feel excited about. And that isn't my unique magic and genius. And I think what's difficult about recognizing that is, number one, this is something that I thought that I really wanted, was to be a successful podcaster. It's actually what I tried to do before even going on TikTok. I tried starting a podcast. Like, that is how this all started. And number two, I feel like it does lend itself to a lot of the gifts that I have in terms of communication and expressing ideas and being authentic and vulnerable. Like, it checks so many of those boxes that it just made sense to me. And so it's always kind of confusing when something that you felt was so meant for you ends up not being meant for you. But the process of creating this podcast and doing this for almost a year is what was meant for me. And so it's about examining all the different parts of your life and being really honest with yourself about whether something feels aligned with you or not, and moving past things like if it felt aligned in the past. Whether or not something felt aligned in the past is not an indication of whether it's aligned with you today. What was meant for you yesterday may not be meant for you today. You also have to let go of beliefs of what or who you should be, or what your egoic mind is telling you that you should want. I think since the moment I started on TikTok, it was like never enough. It was never enough to just be a content creator or to be someone that gave readings. on TikTok, I was always searching for other things to sort of hedge my bets, really, so that if TikTok didn't go well, I had something else to fall back on, which in theory sounds very smart and rational and reasonable. And I think that it's what I needed in that moment. But I'm getting to a point where it's almost like, in a really beautiful way, I can feel my destiny pushing on me and the walls closing in, which I know sounds like that would be a little bit scary, but it's to the point where it's like impossible for something that isn't aligned with me to stay a part of my life right now in many different ways. But one of them being I've been sick for like over a month now as I'm going through this process of getting rid of all these things. And historically, I have not listened to my body. And I feel like this is one of the first times where I just stopped and was like, okay, what are you trying to tell me? And I feel like I did let go of a lot of surface level things and beliefs and my approach to things. There are still these like just pieces of my life that aren't fitting. And so it's time for me to remove those pieces. And sadly, this podcast is one of those pieces. And it's not necessarily a forever, I'm never going to pick this up again. I think if I've taught myself anything in this process, it's never say never. I also have learned not really to announce these types of things, because as soon as I do, then I'm like back 2 weeks later being like, just kidding, which might happen. And I wouldn't be announcing this if I didn't feel like I owed it to you guys, the listeners who tune in, to like let you know what's happening, so you don't just assume that I don't care and fell off the face of the earth. I absolutely care. So that's the reason why I'm announcing it to this specific group. But I'm also, holding space for myself, that I am learning and growing, and I'm letting this go out into the universe. And if it's meant to come back to me, then it will. I have a feeling that if it does come back, it'll be in a different format or cadence or with someone, like a partnership or something. All I know that in this moment, the specific format that it's in, this weekly podcast, is just not serving me anymore. And I want to bring it in to how this can benefit you, because I know that, well, I want that to be the main focus of this podcast. Even in this last episode, I want the focus to be, okay, how can you use this to move your life forward and be on your clear and destined path? And I think one of the more beautiful things that has been revealed to me over the course of this eclipse season is just that everyone has such a unique spark and path within them that is just waiting to be revealed. And the things that are keeping us from not revealing them are holding on to old patterns, old behaviors, the shoulds of the world, and honestly, looking at other people, how they are successful, how they do things, and thinking that we need to do those things, especially if it's a lot of things. I feel like our society tells us, you have to be hustling and grinding in order to get to where you want. And that's just not true for the majority of the population. Yeah, maybe someone out there, maybe there's, a group of people where they really are meant to hustle and grind, and that gives them life. But if you are on the hustle and grind and you are drained, that is the universe trying to show you you're doing too much. And it's like, would you rather do 25 things in a day that move you forward an inch? Or do you want to do one thing really well that moves you forward a mile? And I think we seriously underestimate the power that our energy can have when we narrow down the amount of things that we are putting our energy into and really focus on the things that we're really good at, but also that light us up. And if you don't know what that is, even just dedicating energy to exploring that, to being excited for the universe to reveal that to you, giving yourself time and space for that to come in. But it's almost like we're busying ourselves with all these things throughout our life, and we're just expecting the universe to come in and like hit us on the forehead with the most obvious answer. And sure, if you get really off your path, really sidetracked, and they want you to get back on your path, they will do something like that. But we can save ourselves so much pain and suffering and sadness and frustration if we just slowed down and became really selective with what we put our energy into. Because when you do that, the energy that you choose to put into the thing that is your unique magic, your unique genius, will be 10 times more powerful than if you did that thing, but you spread your energy thin across 20 other things that maybe are kind of aligned with you, but they're not the thing. And, I think there's something that's so beautiful about the process that our soul goes through of revealing itself to us. And that's what's happening, like when you discover your path or figure out what your unique magic is, you're not discovering something that is outside of you. You are revealing something that is already within you. When you listen to this podcast or another one, or you see a show that triggers something within you, or you get excited because you see a pamphlet for a thing that you want to do, it's not an external stimuli that is giving you information. It is an external stimuli triggering information that's already inside you being released and revealed to you. And the more that we can be aware and be present and not put our energy into all of these things that are just draining us and not giving energy back to us, the more that the universe has space to come in and to reveal your soul and your unique magic to you. And I think, what's unfortunate is we all think that there is one path to success. And, whatever that looks like for you, there's a high likelihood that society has taught you that that is the path that you have to go down. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Like, what works for someone else will not work for you. What works for you will not work for someone else. Even if from the outside you want a similar career to someone else, the path that it is going to take you to get there is going to be totally different than this other person. And along the path, you may decide, oh, actually, that industry doesn't serve me at all. And I discovered this other really cool thing that I didn't even know existed. And if I hadn't opened myself to the magic and sort of what we perceive to be randomness of the world, I wouldn't have stumbled upon it. Now, of course, nothing is random. Nothing is a coincidence. Every single thing that you see every single day was placed in front of you for a reason. And so I think some of the hesitation that comes with paring things back and letting things go and creating space is that nothing new is going to come in, and then we're just bored and stagnant and things aren't going anywhere. But if you already feel stagnant and you're doing a bunch of other stuff, it's kind of like, what do you really have to lose? It's like the less far along you are on a certain path, the easier it is to pivot and just put your hands in the air and say, you know what? If this isn't for me, no big deal. I'm just going to do whatever I feel inspired to do. And I know that if I am meant to shift to a different path, that that's what's going to happen. And that I'm okay with that. You know, we desire these lives so badly. And I do think that we desire things for a reason. It is, you know, the universe giving us a clue to the life that we want. But the key is to sort of desire the end feeling of the result that you think is aligned with you, and then let go of what that result looks like and trust that the universe is going to carry you to that result. And it may just not look like the picture that you originally had in your mind. And so if you are wanting to uncover your unique genius and your magic and what that looks like, first I would highly encourage you to go through your life with a fine-tooth comb. And if you discover something that doesn't feel aligned with your unique genius, your unique magic, and it's not bringing you joy, to just clock it. Maybe it's not time for you to walk away from it, particularly if you're unhappy at your job, but you're not ready to make a switch. That's okay. I'm not saying that you have to go change everything overnight, but just start to become aware and even just ponder. And if there's one area of your life where you feel like you have a death grip, like a death hold on it, and if it got ripped out from under you, you would just panic and feel so lost. And no one can take that from me because that's the one thing that I know I'm meant to be doing. That's the thing that the universe wants you to examine. And I know that that's probably scary to hear. That's scary for me to hear. But it's the things that we're holding on to the tightest that a lot of times the universe is getting us to release our grip on it. And it's not that we're not meant to have that thing, but when we try to control it and we say, no, this is the way that I'm going to do this, we will just keep getting jostled around until eventually our hands are loosened off of the grip anyways. And, you know, something that I really learned about myself is I have all of this, I don't know, quote unquote wisdom or just words of guidance that I want to give or experiences that I've gone through that I want to share. And so like the podcast felt like a totally natural place for me to do that. And I'm just realizing that for now, my most effective form of communication with the broader public and the people that I'm meant to help is through channeled messages. And, you know, in a lot of ways, this podcast is always a channeled message. It's just a longer version of it. It's just a lot more of my own experience weaved in there. And I do think that there is going to be a place for that in my life, whether it's in podcast form or book form or something like that. I'm not sure. But I know that for now, the way that I feel inspired to deliver this information and to give these messages and to help people is through channeled messages. And I just realized that for now, that is where my unique genius lies and where my magic lies. And the more that I spend time on other endeavors that are not filling me with energy, the less energy I have to give to those channeled messages. Like, I think that's one thing that really kind of set off an alarm bell for me in the past month is I would go to give these channeled messages and I would just feel so drained. And I would notice that, like, you know, when I used to channel past loved one messages, I would take on the personality of the past loved one and I would be animated and I would have all this energy. And like for the life of me, I just couldn't do that. And I found myself like stopping and redoing so many readings because I was like, my energy is just off. And like, how do I get that back? And I specifically stated to the universe, I'd like to get that back. Show me how to get that back. And their answer was, you're spreading yourself way too thin instead of just focusing on the thing that lights you up, that you are, uniquely good at, and that can reach and help the most amount of people with the gifts that you have. And I do want to be clear that if something is bringing you joy and filling you with energy, but you don't feel like you have a unique genius or magic in it, like you don't feel particularly skilled in that thing, that is totally fine. The universe shows us where to go by what lights us up. And so if something lights you up, whether you are really good at it or terrible at it, by all means, go forward with that thing. You may not know how it's going to relate, but just following things that excite you is the way to get you to your unique genius and your unique magic. I'm talking about looking at things that are not lighting you up, that don't feel aligned, that maybe were aligned at one time, but it's time to let it go for now. That's the other thing that can really help loosen our grip on these things that we don't want to let go of, is saying, okay, I'm just going to release this into the universe for now. And I know in my soul that if it's meant to come back to me, it will. And that is how I feel about this podcast, and I don't, it may come back to me at some point in time. It may come back to me in the next month. It may come back to me in the next year. It may come back to me in 10 years. It may never come back to me. But I think just knowing that all I'm doing is releasing it and letting go, and knowing that if it's meant to come back to me, it will, gives me a little bit more comfort and reassurance in letting go of it in the first place. So if there's something that you have your death grip on and you examine it and you find, shoot, I don't actually know if this is aligned with me, and you need some help letting go, just know that it can always come back to you and you can always come back to it. And when I was looking at this, I really sort of had to take a look at, originally I thought that the life of a successful podcaster sounded really good and like something that I wanted to do. And I had to examine why that was. And did I really see myself fitting into that life? Because it is a lot more structured and formatted than sort of the easy flowing of my channeled messages that are more sporadic with timing. They're not usually as long. They're more pointed. And it's like we may want on a surface level for something to work and for it to be for us. But at the same time, we know on a soul level that it's not for us at this time. But I have had an incredible time doing this podcast, and, I wouldn't change anything about it. I wouldn't have wanted to come to this realization sooner, even if it meant speeding up my timeline, because I know that every single episode that I've done has helped me. And I know that every single episode has helped someone out there. And I'm really grateful to everybody that has tuned in. And I am sorry for not continuing. If this is, a podcast that you listen to every week, I really, really appreciate that. And so I am sorry for not continuing on. But I also understand that me keeping this going just to not let people down is not serving anyone. What may feel like an unpopular opinion in the moment will always pass, and people will likely forget about it. Like if this is in your normal podcast rotation, give it a few weeks, you'll probably forget about it. Which, is hard to admit, but it's true. And I remember telling that to a friend who had made a decision in her life in terms of a relationship that people were really upset and up in arms about. And I just remember saying to her, like, it may be an unpopular opinion now, but 5 years from now, no one's going to care, and you will have made a decision that was aligned with you and that you feel good about, and that made your life so much better. So, in a world full of people pleasing and being polite and doing things that we think people want us to do and being people that we think people want us to be, just remember, even if something is an unpopular opinion in the moment, an unpopular decision, with time, everyone will get over it and a lot of people will forget about it. I think we overestimate the amount of power that we think our decisions have in other people's lives. And it's not to say that we should go around making decisions without thinking about anyone's feelings. Of course, we should take that into consideration. But if you are hanging on to something or doing something just to please other people and you're afraid of letting them down, you're honestly letting them down by continuing to do that thing and not doing the thing that's most aligned with your soul. Because whenever you make a decision to end something or leave something or start something, if that decision impacts other people and if it's aligned with your soul, you are actually making space in their life for something that is going to propel them forward much more than if you kind of stuck it out in that thing. So with that, I'm always talking about trying to find other podcasts that I like, especially in the spiritual realm, which I feel like it's hard to do. I'll find like a podcast episode here or there that I feel good about sharing, but not sort of an overall podcast. But I love human design, and I have been listening to Human Design with Jenna Zoe, who also has the app, the Human Design app that I really love. I think it's also called My Human Design with Jenna Zoe. So I'll put that podcast link in the show notes if you are specifically looking for a new podcast that you want to add into your rotation. And maybe this is the exact transition that you need from Guided Souls to My Human Design, or another podcast that is actually going to take you further than I could if I continued on this path at this time. So thank you to everyone who has been on this journey with me, especially for the people who regularly tune in. I honestly can't put into words how much it means to me that anyone cares what I have to say, but especially to the people who tune in and listen and appreciate the words that I have given. That means the world to me. I would never change this experience for the world. And who knows? I might be back. I'm just releasing this into the universe and seeing if it comes back to me. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here with me and listening to me. And you can always catch up with me. I shouldn't say always. You can't always do anything. Can't always commit to anything. But for the time being, if you want to continue seeing my content, the best place to do that is on TikTok at Guided Soul Crystals. And I may be expanding more on YouTube or Instagram in the future. But again, I'm just being really selective about where I put my energy right now. So until next time, whenever that time may be, keep going. You are doing amazing. And I love you.